I think in the audiences there are your former students and fans who are traveling from different parts of Hong Kong, from different universities, to come to see you. Yeah, this is the first time Jorge come to Hong Kong, and for me, after many tries, eventually made this happen. So I'm so glad to moderate this event. Professor DIAZ-CINTAS is a professor in translation and founder director of the Center for Translation Studies at UCL. And I think it's suffice to say that Jorge is one of the founding scholars for our beloved field called audiovisual translation and media accessibility. And he is also one of the scholars who started our own conference, Media for All and Languages and the Media, and also our very specialized journal of audiovisual translation. And beyond his academic achievement, he is also offering high-level consultancy to Netflix and other media platforms, and also transnational institutions like European Union and NATO. So it's going to be an exciting night for all of us to hear from you. So without further ado, let's give Jorge a very big warm welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I feel a little bit sort of intimidated by the and all the expectations that come with that. Thank you, Dingkun, for having invited me, and thank you to the department of the University of Hong Kong. They say that it's third time lucky. It wasn't in my case, it's fourth time lucky. I couldn't come in any of the previous occasions for different reasons and commitments, but I am delighted to be here and meeting you all in person. And I know there are some people joining online, so I'd like to just also acknowledge their presence here with us today. I gave it a sort of very general topic, and I will explain a little bit what I want to achieve today with you. I'm going to be basing and having some of the concepts behind here, some of the ideas that will be at the basis of the angle that I want to take here. So one of the concepts here is platformization, how the platforms have changed our lives. This is a very basic definition that I find very useful as well, in the sense that the platforms have had an impact not only on the economic side of our lives, but also in the political way of doing things, and also in the cultural dimensions. Whether for good or bad, we don't know. Some people will have different ideas on how things are changing, how we live more and more in these sort of digital ecosystems, and we sort of communicate through that, and we do lots of things. So that's one of the concepts that I'm going to be relating to, but I'm going to be discussing going to the cloud. It was too ambitious. There are far too many things that you could do in the cloud. And if I'm going to go looking at audiovisual translation, I needed to narrow it down a little bit. Not knowing my audience, I took a chance here, and I've decided that I'm going to be taking a look at the platforms, these all clouds that are the cloud system that is happening here from three perspectives. The industry, then I'm going to move to cyber practices, which is sort of the parallel universe in these multiverses, the parallel one, which is not commercial, that is more ad hoc by certain people. And then everybody's talking about artificial intelligence these days. I believe that today also in Hong Kong, we've been double booked. There's something else going on in another university about artificial intelligence, translation, and so on. So I didn't want to be less than that. And I came up with a little bit on what does it mean, if it means something for us in audiovisual translation. So this is the skeleton of my presentation today. And I'm going to start, as I mentioned earlier on, with the industry. So what is happening and why is the cloud important in here? Now, you've got there NIMSI. I don't know if you know them. They are a group, a body that what they do, they keep an eye on translation. What is going on? And they keep an eye quite a lot on audiovisual translation, because a lot is going on in audiovisual translation. Just the day before yesterday, I think, they came out with a list of how translation is divided. So you've got there the different angles, but this one here, I think is more visual. So these are what this company or this group considers translation. You've got many sectors there. General traditional translation that they just call translation and localization, taking still the big part of the pie. But then what you'd also get, which is what is my interest in here, is the area of subtitling and dubbing. Both of them occupy a big space, well, a little space here, 5.9%, 10.7%, which is good because it means that there is a lot to develop even further in this industry. I don't think it's not clear in their work here, but I don't think they take into consideration, for instance, access services. I'm given for granted that all of you are familiar with audiovisual and you know about audio description, subtitles for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, which I think usually escape translation because sometimes we don't translate, we translate images, but you do it in English, a Chinese film in Chinese, so you don't need to know English or any other languages. So sometimes when they do this work, they don't look into what is generated by those. To give you an example, for instance, in the UK, the BBC 100% has got subtitles for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, everything. And then 20% have got audio description. So it's quite a substantial amount of material that also gets done through access. But this is what we are. According to NIMSI, you've got here the market. We started in translation with the VHS. If you remember what that was, I used to work with some of those, or beta cams were the best copies to work with the industry. We moved on to the DVD, particularly the digitization of images, and the communication made it possible to have everything in one little disc. Again, if you remember what it was, because the Blu-ray came to do something that we thought it was going to be the new generation, but it didn't last. And what we are now is in this OTT. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. They love it in the industry. OTT is over the top, is similar to streaming. But you can also say of someone, don't be so OTT, don't be so hyperbolic, don't be so eccentric. And it plays on that, the industry likes it, so everybody, Netflix loves to call themselves OTT. Yeah? So you got, that is the evolution. That's what we are now. This OTT is clearly platform-based. Yeah, it's in the cloud. And you can see here the evolution, and also with China as one of the main parties here, how the volume is meant to be increasing year on year, and is triggering all the translation and all the communication through those channels. So that's why it's so exciting to be in this situation, in this place now. You've got as well this audio visualization of communication. We communicate more and more. When I was a young guy, many years ago, I was talking to Dingkun, he's a little girl, and we belong to two completely different angles. I used to just have my books, and I would read on paper and things like that. These days, it's all digital. People just go into a screen straight away. And in this audio visualization, I just wanted to show you a few statistics. YouTube, they pride themselves in their statistics. We are the second largest. AVOD, video on demand. A is for advertisement, and SVOD is for subscription, Netflix, Disney Plus, whatever. So they proud themselves to be the second largest, but they don't see who is the first. Yeah, they can see that, so they probably don't want to give undue publicity to the competition. Who do you think the best will be? The biggest? Anyone? It's not far from you. It's closer to you than to me or to Luis in Spain.
TikTok.
Bilibili.
Oh.
Bilibili for videos is the one that contains more than YouTube. Compare that then, you've got here YouTube. Every day, people watch about 1 billion hours of programs. Every day. Every minute of our lives, I've been talking for more than a few minutes, every minute of our lives, there are 500 hours of audiovisual productions that go on to YouTube. Forget about anybody else. Vimeo, Bilibili, TikTok, Disney Plus, Amazon. This is only YouTube. Yeah? Netflix, they give us every day about 4 or 5 new programs. Every day they are producing. So that gives you the volume, the idea on how things are produced here. And then YouTube, they are in 100 countries and they do 80 languages. Okay, so I'm going to recuperate these figures a bit later, but that's what they do. So it's only 100 countries. Yeah, it's not the whole world. And they've got 80 languages there. And then how people consume. We produce a lot. Why do produce a lot? Because clearly you consume a lot. Yeah, I do as well, but I don't think I fit into this statistics. I just took a look at the UK through this platform Statista, and in the period of 2020, you've got there that in the UK, people were watching an average of 5 hours and 40 minutes per day. They were glued to a screen. Okay, I tell you, I swear that I don't spend that much time. Some people is being watching for me. Yeah, I'm doing a lot more to get the statistics up. But that's what you get. And if you think that is a lot, we've got a body in the UK, which is the Ofcom. This body just regulates what we see on the screens, about how many subtitles we can have and whatever. According to them, that's not really right, because it was 6 hours and 25 minutes. That's what they calculated that an average English person, British person, was watching per day on the screens. So there is a lot of volume, but there is a lot of consumption happening in here. And we seem to have subtitles everywhere, you know, usually to translate from one language into another. In some parts of the world, like in here, all at once. You are one of the very few ones in the world that will have bilingual subtitles. You want the translation, but you also want the original. You want everything there on the screens. When I show this to my students in Europe, they always get puzzled. Well, why do you want the originals? Well, how can you read all the text there? So that is what you do in here. And we do know that, for instance, according to research by the BBC, young viewers watch all the time with subtitles. Not bilingual, monolingual, but they prefer to watch with subtitles. So there is something there that calls it attention. It might be like this one here. I just brought it to bring something audiovisual to my presentation on the value of subtitles. So you got that part, that might be part of the equation why the attraction of subtitles in all these productions. So what do we find in the industry? Well, we find that the volumes have grown exponentially, but not only the volume. And in my lifetime is the first time that also language combinations are changing. You know, this industry was basically very English monolingual in the production system. Now that is all changing because we've got many more productions in many more languages. That is very exciting for us. It's a nightmare for the industry on how to operate with so many languages and so many combinations. How do we can do it? So we've got more translations, for instance, from English into other languages. It was not long ago that, for instance, Disney Plus went to Iceland and they forgot to have Icelandic in Iceland. So the Prime Minister came on the telly, there was a lot of pressure, and guess what? Disney incorporated Icelandic as one of the languages. We've got as well that Netflix keep growing the number of languages. So recently they incorporated another 10 languages. So we know that little by little, there is more done into other languages in there. Even so, remember what I said, YouTube, it was 100 countries and already 80 languages. But Netflix seems to be doing away with murder here because they're doing 45 languages, 50 at most, but they're covering the whole world. Yeah, and even when they say that they don't operate in certain countries, you've got there China, North Korea, and Syria, The reality is that Syria is Arabic, is covered. North Korea is Korean, is covered. And Chinese were the two Chinese, Mandarin and traditional, is being part of the Netflix portfolio since day one. So in effect, they're in the whole world, but only doing 45 languages. How are they managing, and how are people watching in certain countries? And again, the horizon is really open to create many more languages as well in there. And what you've got is, when you go to the detail, we know that some of them are not doing what they say they're doing. They tell you, oh, we do all this in all these languages with accessibility. But this research by someone in Spain tells you that, for instance, Disney Plus, which is this one here, they're not doing any accessibility in Spain. Nothing at all. Even though they say, oh, we want to be accessible for people with disabilities, that's social marketing. They just say it, but they like it. But if you go and check out their portfolio, very little is there. And even Netflix telling us that they do want to be fully inclusive, look, it's just minute what they're doing. So the area to grow there is still pretty vast, and a lot to go there. What we do as well have is more translation from other languages into English. And this is one thing that has been changing. Traditionally was art, cinema, a few films, film festivals, very few people will watch it. Yeah. What we finding now is that we're getting a lot more. A lot has been going on to the value of the film Parasite. They won the Oscar to the best film, not foreign language, but the best film overall. And then the director came out with this little sentence here that became very popular throughout the world. You only need to go over 1 inch, which is more or less the distance of a subtitle. If you go over that, then you enter a new kingdom. Yeah, it's a bit like Alice in Wonderland. Rather than going down there, you just jump, and then boom, you're in a different country or in a different place. And it makes it very nice, very peculiar there. It is true that having won the Oscar, then in the USA, then the popularity of foreign language productions really shot up, and then a lot more was being translated into English. One of the funny things here is that Netflix were aware that they were translated into other languages, and they asked the Americans, if you were going to be watching productions in other languages, not in English, what would you prefer? And what do you think they said? The Americans, when they were asked, would you like to see the foreign productions dubbed or subtitled? What do you think they did? They said subtitled. Why? Because they didn't have any tradition of dubbing. The Americans were always watching these foreign films, which were really few numbers. In film festivals, it was a sort of cultural elite, watching them always with subtitles. But remember, Netflix are disruptors. It's like, Airbnb. How do you work with tourism and hotels? We're going to check it. You get Uber. How do people move in the cities? We're going to check the whole system. And Netflix came and checked the whole system. And then people told them, we like subtitles. What does Netflix do? Here you have dubbed versions. Yeah? And then what they found is that people lie. And when they were given two versions, dubbed and subtitled, more people went to the dubbed version than the subtitle, even though they say, oh, we prefer subtitles. The reality was that they went to the dubbed version. Not only that, the people who went to the dubbed version, they completed watching the whole series many more than the ones who went for the subtitle version. So now in the UK, I get everything with dubbed versions, which 5 years ago, there was nothing. Yeah, so it's a huge change. I spent all my life telling my students, the English ones in my classes, don't do dubbing. There's nothing in the market. It's a waste of time. You're not going to get a job. And I have to go back to them and say, didn't you say you wanted to do dubbing? Maybe now is the moment to go back and start thinking about how dubbing is done. Well before Parasite came, 2 years earlier in 2018, Netflix was already alerting us. Very little by little, but they say, Netflix plans to get everyone watching foreign language content, and then in the smaller print, even the US citizens, even the Americans that are very reluctant to watch anything else. So they were already telling us we're going to be doing things that people are not expecting. And what that has had is, of course, an impact, not only on how things are being consumed, but much more in-depth, culturally speaking. Because now, if you want to go in London to a Korean restaurant, you better start booking now to go there in January, because they're all chock-a-block. They're all popular. Now the popular things are Korean, because that's what we watch on the telly. Everybody knows now what kimchi is, when a few years back, nobody knew that. But it is the power that comes with the images that they are banking on and creating another economy behind that. I'm not going to go into detail of that, but that is something that we can see in there. And if you're familiar with this TV show, German, the German show here, it was watched by 9 out of 10 outside of Germany. So the Germans virtually was a very minute audience. And then more than half of Netflix subscribers watch content that is in other languages than English. So we're finding more and more consumption in other languages. I'm glad to say that Spanish is becoming also very popular in these platforms as a different angle. So, of course, given this appetite for new languages, new cultures, new stories, Squid Games and all those things, or Money Heist, then Netflix has been investing a lot in new languages and in new countries. And they've been instigating this drive. Now, from a political perspective, it's not been the Koreans selling us and serving us their productions. It's been an American intermediary using the Korean productions to bring them to the rest of the world, which makes for a funny sort of convoluted way of distributing culture and information. Korean is been one of the big winners of this globalization in that field, and Netflix probably one of the main instigators, but by no means the only one. Then you got, for instance, Disney Plus. They've also gone to look at other productions that are not just in English. And then you've got HBO, which is the traditional distributor for American productions. Also started a few years back with an Italian series called L'Amica Geniale, based on a book. And that was, again, the first in a direction that nobody was really expecting and going there. What we've got here is that there is a lot of production in the world. Yeah, and then you've got there from IMDb, over the last decade, an average of 15,000 new films and 250,000 TV series were produced. That is more or less every day we are doing about 750 hours per day on films and TV series. Yeah, it's a lot if you multiply by minutes and so on. And what is it that we're watching? What you've got here, the statistics here are for the USA, which is the one concentrating more of this analysis. But what you've got here is when it comes to watching something that is not in English, from 2017 to 21, which is about 4 years, there was nearly double, more than double. From 15, nearly double, 27%. So it's quite a bit inclined there. But what is it that people are watching? And what we have is a different perspective now. We take a look at whether it is films or TV series. Yeah, if you take a look at films, they still remain to be pretty English. Only 9% are in different languages. But when you go to TV series, that's the big bulk. That's what everybody's watching now. And that's when you get a 37% increase in here. So we know that people are still, the film industry is pretty much English driven, but it is when it comes to TV series that we're finding a lot more variety and diversity in the languages that we are working from. And also depends on different countries and different regions. This is from a Spanish study, but you got here, blue is for, there we're looking at films. So in Europe, blue is English films or films in English, and you can see there is a lot of blue. You are one of the regions here in Asia, APAC, which is a bit more yellowy, but otherwise you can see that most of the world is blue. The films are in English, and that's what we're consuming. But if you take a look at the same for TV series, then you can see that it's a lot more yellow. And look at the Americas, which they got films virtually all in English. When it comes to telenovelas and soap operas from Latin America, that's what they are really big. Yeah, and those are the ones that are being exported into other places. So we do know that sort of division is happening there in the industry. Now, is this really, generally speaking, or in certain countries, is because Netflix and Disney Plus, they're really good and they're really philanthropic and they want to get everybody to watch everything, or is there more that meets the eye? Why are they going into so many languages? Why are they doing all these things? Is they good heart, money, or what? And if you look a little bit, then you can see, for instance, that in Europe, we have got some legislation, which is this Audiovisual Media Services Directive. Now, this is a piece of legislation which is top. Every country in the European Union, 26 countries, they need to abide by this. Okay? And what they say is that here, this 30%, it says, okay, any big OTT, video on demand, that want to operate in Europe needs to have at least 30% of their catalog in languages of those countries. So if Netflix comes with only English, then they won't be able to operate in the European Union, because they need to have 1/3 in other languages, Spanish, French, German, Italian, Hungarian, whichever, but they need to be much more diversified in their languages. So now that explains a little bit better why Netflix has been pushing so much for different languages and coming into education. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to operate in Europe, at least. And the same with Disney and so on. So there is a political drive to make sure that these things are done in a manner that is balanced according to whoever comes with those laws. Yeah, and this becomes highly political because whoever has got the power of the media has got the power of the populations. It goes. Yeah, and that is one thing that we see. I'm going to give you a little example on how powerful language and translation can be at a political level. Luis will know, but you might not know that in Spain, we've got, for the first time ever in our history, a government that is a coalition. There is two parties, several parties these days, several parties in power. Okay? Before it was one big party and no discussions. They did whatever they want. Now there was a conglomeration of parties. And some of those parties come from regions where they speak different languages. So we had a moment when we have to decide on the budget for the country. And then the regions said, okay, we're not allowing anything unless you translate into Catalan. Yeah? And then Catalan became, you can see there, politics. It was the Independent, the Guardian, the Times. Wow, in Spain, what's going on? The money is only going to approve if you translate into our language as well. And that's when it started there. The Catalans, in effect, we've got other three languages, mainly Galician and Basque, but the media capitalized on Catalan. But you got there, they were asking for that percentage. Out of that 30% that needs to be into local languages, at least these people want it in their own language, not only in Spanish for Spain. That was the way it was done in there. It was all in political there. You can see here, I like it how it was framed as well in the newspaper. You can see here that Spain is forcing Netflix. Spain is putting the pressure on Netflix. This one here is Spanish approved thanks to Netflix. Yeah? Netflix were the saviors of our government in Spain. It wasn't that Spain was forcing them. I don't know what the solution was here. I can guess that probably the government of Spain said, oh, well, if you do Catalan, we might give you a little bit of money to help you to start with doing things. I don't know. I wasn't privy to those meetings. The reality is that within 1 month, we had 70 series and movies into Catalan in Netflix. They didn't exist, and overnight, 1 month or so, lots of things in Catalan. So it shows you how the translation became pivotal for some countries from some political persuasions, and how they are creating that visibility through the media, through the way they use it. And the other thing that has been very instrumental, we always talk about audiovisual translation for entertainment. Yeah, but there are many other things. And if I don't have the statistics, I don't think we have them. But I wouldn't be surprised if we translate more non-entertainment than entertainment, with corporate videos and lots of things. What we have had in Europe is that the European government, if you know a little bit there, Europe is divided, has got three bodies: the Parliament, the Commission, and the Council. Those are the biggest producers of translation in the world, because they have to translate into 24 languages. Everything gets translated. So it's thousands of words, if not millions of words every year that they have to translate. Only 2 years ago, they created the subtitling and voiceover unit. That was the first ever. That, you know, they were coming with something totally new. They realized that younger generations don't like reading paper and nothing, but they prefer videos. Yeah, and then they discovered that we need to do something and we need to create a unit. So what they're doing now, as soon as they advertised that, they came up with advertisement looking for people with subtitling to work on videos that are different. They're not entertainment. They are meetings. They are general dissemination of information, other types that you might need other skills to translate as well. I don't know if you like football. I don't particularly like football, but I was approached by FIFA Plus, which is the Netflix of sports, as apparently as they like marketing themselves. And they were looking for subtitlers who know football. Not anyone that can do subtitles, but subtitlers that like football, that they know the terminology and they know everything. Yeah, and we're finding more and more. It's not surprise. Translation, when we started, it was general translation, but nobody studies really general translation. Now you study medical translation, scientific translation, technical translation, literary translation. You do granularly, you are granular. In audiovisual, to say, I am an audiovisual translator these days is, well, and what is your specialty? You know, what do you translate? And some people now are going, I do sports or cookery programs, or I am more into corporate videos or other things. And that is, I guess, the natural evolution of a translation field. I told you as well, we've got more translation from other languages, different to English, into other languages, different to English. And this is when it becomes a bit mental. So we've got from English, I need to translate into other languages, okay? I also need to do from other languages into English. We've seen that. But when it becomes really challenging is that I need to do other languages into other languages. I need to translate Chinese into Estonian. I need to translate Turkish into Bulgarian or Turkish into Finnish. How do I do that? How do I get those language combinations? Does it make sense that everyone now starts learning Korean because it's the flavor of the month? Oh, Korean, I'll do Korean. You last 10 years or whatever you last in learning Korean, and then it's changed, and then the flavor of the month is Turkish. Yeah, because Korean is not fashionable anymore. So is that sustainable into the future? How do we do that? So what we've got here is we usually work with templates. Again, I am assuming that you're all familiar. I'm leaving my PowerPoint behind. And if anybody wants a copy, send me an email. I'll give you my email at the end. Please feel free, Jorge, I want a copy, and I'll give it to you. There are lots of links that I cannot exploit here, but I'm more than happy to share my material with you. So feel free. But this is what a template is. That is, I get the original and I get the translation already in English. That's the traditional approach. English audio, English already in text. So what I need to do is the linguistic translation. I don't need to take into consideration the technical dimension. They used to look like this, very boring, lots of numbers so that you can synchronize your text. Then the text here in English that I needed to change. A bit more sophisticated with macros. You know, times again, numbers, numbers, numbers. I know you did languages because you didn't like mathematics, but hey, subtitling is numbers, numbers, and nothing but numbers. Yeah, that helps me with the technical side. And then in here, that I could do my translation. That's all disappeared because we've gone to the cloud. What you get now is this. And I think some of you might be familiar with some of these environments. Your video, your template in English, and then you translate here into Chinese. Yeah, that's this simple and very straightforward. What I find now is how do I then translate from Korean into Spanish? Yeah, and we've got in the industry, it's called the whispering effect. I don't know if anybody has heard about that. And it plays on English phrase. There is a game in English, which is, don't ask me why, the Chinese whispers. Yeah, we call it in my country the telephone. Yeah, so you tell somebody to their ear, you say something, that person says somebody else, and at the end, my message is totally distorted. Yeah, it comes out as something different. That's what is happening now in the industry. I've got a Korean film that I need to translate into Spanish. How do I do it? Korean into Spanish. How many people? Oof, not many. But I'm going to do Korean into English and then into Spanish. Yes, good, but so you've got here, this is from Parasite. So in the original, they are mentioning Seoul National University as a sort of very popular university, and the father is looking at a imitation, is a fake certification, and so I didn't realize that in this very prestigious university, they are doing degrees on faking degrees, yeah, and it's playing with that. So when you get into the English one, it is, oh wow, that's Oxford have a major in documentary forgery. Now, Seoul National University becomes Oxford. Well, it might work for the Americans or the British. I don't know, would a Korean go to study in Oxford? And you must know the fees that foreigners pay both in Oxford and in other universities in the UK from a working class family in Korea. To me, it sort of takes me out, but okay, that's the Americans or the Brits. They can solve it themselves. What happens when it comes to Spanish? Then in Spanish, he also goes to Oxford. So I'm not translating from Korean any longer. I am translating from the English, but also through the cultural perception of the English. Why Oxford and not other university? Do Koreans go to Oxford? If I am from Spain, I don't know any better. What are they saying in there? So that's what we're finding now in there. And now, if you know the reason, actually the translator was asked, and he said, my initial impression, my initial decision was to translate Harvard. But when I was a student, I applied for Harvard and they rejected me. So I thought, no, not Harvard, Oxford. Yeah, so it was a very, very personal, silly decision. But that is now going through to many other languages. And then we're using the British psyche or the American psyche to go through the translation. And that's what it can be very dangerous. In this apparent open globalization that we are consuming a lot more Koreans, actually, is it Korean or am I seeing it through the eyes of American translators? Yeah, and this is why I think we need to be paying attention to. There has been a lot written. This article is very interesting on the quality of those templates that they're doing. If they continue using references that are good for the Americans, how do we fare in other languages? And Netflix as well has created guidelines on how to produce those documents that are becoming pivotal. You know, that's the main thing that you're going to be working. You might be, from a translator's perspective, it might be great because you might be given a Spanish production. You don't speak a word of Spanish, but still, they're going to give you the Spanish with subtitles in English that then you translate into Chinese. Yeah, and that means that you can go not to Spanish and Korean and Estonian and Danish and Swedish, because then you're going to have the help of the English in between. So it opens up more possibilities for you, but it is risky. And that's, I think, what we need to be bearing in mind. I'll take a look because I talk a lot and I've got a lot to give here. Cyber practices. And I'm moving now to, that is the commercial side. Let's see what are people doing on the internet for other things. And I've got a few concepts here that I'm going to leave here with you as well. But is this convergence culture, is this idea that the old media, what I was used when I was young, and your new media, that you can go on the internet and search for anything, and on your mobiles, that's wow. You know, I couldn't dream of that when I was young. All those are colliding, they're clashing. Yeah, and they're allowing us to do certain things that we weren't able to do before. That's one concept that I like and I want to just use there. Then is this process. We're not just simply producers or consumers, but we are both. We can produce and consume, and then we can consume things and reuse them to our own benefit. And I will show you some examples as well. And then the other thing that I like is this democratization of technology. It is only through technology that we've been able to do all these things. And then you can get digital technology. You might not remember, but the internet wasn't always moving. Yeah, the internet was a page, static, boring, and that was it. You know, no videos, nothing. And it was when we moved to Web 2.0 that then it became agile, dynamic, and so on. And then you can do anything you want with a video. Yeah, and with artificial intelligence, even more that you want it to do. And then we've got freeware that would allow you to do your subtitles and everything. That wasn't available 15 years ago, and that has changed the way we relate to audiovisual productions, but also the way we relate to translations. Yeah, not commercially, but from a perspective of a user. Yeah? The most popular one is fan subs. Yeah, and what can I tell you about fan subs that you don't know? You probably know more than me. I still, till this day, I cannot understand that people have got spare time and then they use it doing subtitles. Really. You know, I don't have enough hours in my days to do anything, but people just, when they're bored, they just go and do subtitles. So, well, I was reading the other day, I was telling Dingkun earlier on, I like tennis, and the lady who won the opening in the USA, Coco something, I've forgotten her surname, but she was interviewed before, and she must be very busy training and so on, and they asked her, so what do you do in your spare time? I said, well, I like, I don't know what first, I like this, and I also like dubbing. Is that really? It's like doing subtitles, but she just like having videos and then putting her voice and playing and creating videos that are silly or funny or whatever. Gone are the days that people, you know, I just like reading books or maybe even swimming. No, now people do subtitles or do dubbing or whatever. One of the main things as well that changed the perception of consuming audiovisual productions is how, as a translator, you interfere in the translation. In commercial subtitles, you cannot interfere. You understand it's a play on words, you don't know how to resolve it, but you don't put at the bottom, like you would do in the book, hey, play on words, I don't know how to resolve it, but they're doing this, and I explain, I show off. I know what is going, but hey, I cannot do much more than that. These people just came up with these ideas of top notes. I'm gonna use a term that I know you're not going to understand. I'm doing it on purpose, and I'm giving you the definition so that you can get more into the culture, that you get a bit more authentic what is happening in there. And that went through to some of the productions. You know, it was at the beginning, it was only anime. I found it as well in some films. Sometimes to certain extent of success. He had 12 kilos of pasturma. Pasturma clearly is difficult, so the translator decided, I'm going to help you. Armenian pastrami. Is it helping me? I'm not really sure. I can see that the person was trying, not very successfully to me. But anyway, that is a way that you wouldn't really find in any commercial subtitling for any companies that are doing this. And that was one of the main things that they brought around. Now, I've been working a little bit on these spaces in the cyberspace. What is it that you can do? And everybody can do anything. And, you know, for many different reasons. So I've tried with a colleague of mine, we came up with a way of trying to look at it. So what is the motivation behind? And then you can see people that do it altruist. I'm going to do a video. I remember talking once to somebody from a library in Kabul, in Afghanistan. And they were asking people to help them translate videos about education, mathematics, physics, because that was the way for girls in Afghanistan to be able to learn from their home, because they couldn't go to the school. And they said there are so many videos with so many concepts. If people can translate this, then we can have it on the website and people can reach in the safety of their own home. That was altruistic, and people were helping and translating and doing that. You can do it for fan subbing. I love it so much that I want the rest of the world to know that this is fantastic. Or you can be an activist. I am doing this because I hate my government in Spain. I want to do something. I'm really upset about this, and I'm going to, with a video or whatever. You can also do it depending on the relationship with the original. You can be serious. You are translating. That is a serious translation. Or you can be parodic. I'm only using the video as an excuse to convey a meaning that is totally ridiculous and that it makes you laugh. And then by laughing at it, you are laughing at those politicians or those people in that video. So you're taking as well a stand there. You can also take a look at the language transfer. It can be interlingual across languages, or it can be within the same language. We also find. Then another parameter is the producers who are producing them. We always say it's amateurs. On the internet, it's amateurs, but it's far from true. The last time they stopped someone in Spain because he was doing illegal fan subbing, he was in his 50s and he was a high IT engineer. Yeah, and he liked thrillers from Scandinavia. That was his field of expertise. So it wasn't young people or amateurs. Sometimes you get professionals. I know how to do subtitles. I've got a spare moment here. I'd like to do this for a particular group or for whatever reason that I've got. And then the other one is who is commissioning you. Yeah, you can be, nobody's commissioning me. I'm going to do this because I want to. Or some people is asking you, would you like to do subtitles for us? And they might pay you or not pay you. Yeah. So that is what we find in all these activities. And you can have the traditional approach. Somebody asks you to do subtitles, and then they pay you. That's all my life until we started with the internet. But that was any LSP, any vendors, any companies. Now, to my surprise, I can find somebody's asking me for subtitles and doesn't want to pay me. I know what I will do if I were repairing washing machines. You want me to repair your washing machine and you don't pay me? Hey. No. But some people volunteer. I say, okay, yes, I'll do that. And hey, wow, yes, why not? And I'm going to do that. And usually you've got TED, for instance, this website, which some people get paid and some others don't. But it's not all for free. And this is what is being called this dependency model. Okay, you depend from someone else and it's open to exploitation. Ethically, it's pretty dubious in how it's done. What you do also get is not commissioned and free. Nobody's asked me for my work, but I want to volunteer that. I'm going to get a video, I'm going to put it on the internet, and I'm going to do it because I'm Jorge, I was bored, and I just wanted to do something on that weekend. Yeah, so you can do that. Nobody's exploiting you, and it's known as the development model. So nobody's really exploiting you. It's a way of empowering yourself because you've got a say. Whether anybody's following you or not is another issue, but at least you've got your say. Yeah, and then you can say something or you can show your emotions there. Now, I'm going to show you some examples of how this subtitling with intent. Yeah, this is the area that I like of all the other ones, altruist and so on, is the one that you're doing it for a reason. Yeah, you are really working on this. And I like a couple of concepts. This semiotic democracy is a concept that it was coined quite a while ago. And it's this idea that we are all entitled to communicate. Yeah, you've got there, you can use cultural symbols in response to the media. So yours, the media is omnipresent, is the powerful there. So you're taking the other stance. You're going to be subversive. Yeah, and this is through this semiotic democracy that you're allowed or you are given the means to do some of these things. And then you've got, related to that is semiotic activism. You're doing it for a reason, which is to engage with a particular way of thinking, a particular cause. We've got groups dealing with things for LGBTQ issues, groups dealing with things for women's issues, whatever it is that you find affinity with those different groups through that activism that happens on the internet. And what you do is, for this is what is called self-mediation. Basically, you do everything. Yeah, you just take your initiative to use this remediation. What I'm going to do is, maybe I'm not going to create anything from scratch, but I'm going to use this clip, this excerpt from this film, and then I'm going to rework it in a way that in this other context is going to mean something else. Yeah, and that's reasonably easy rather than having to record anything from scratch. What you do there is that remediation. I'm going to reuse, repurpose things that have been done, What I can also do is the bricolage, which is manual things. This comes from French, which is I'm going to put everything together. Sometimes I will alter the order. In the film, it was ABC, but what I want to do is play it differently. I'm going to see at the beginning, I'm going to use another video, then something else, and I'm reframing it so that the message is totally different. And it suits what I want to say to you. Yeah. So these are some of the concepts that we have articulated when working on the internet on how to do it. Some of the examples. You've got the logo on the top is a little bit cryptic, but it's actually Al Jazeera. There you can see the A and the J. They became as being a very feisty group, based mainly in the Arab world at the beginning. And then you got here, that's the way they come across on the internet. They do subtitles for people, okay, and videos. And they tell you, we are without borders. If you are without borders, you need translation. You cannot go across borders if you don't use translation. And then they tell you they want to challenge the power, the status quo. Yeah, that's a big statement, you know, for a group. We're going to fight the governments and whatever. You've got another one, which is Spanish, called revolution, revolution, but it's R, and then evolution. It plays with the word. You could also play with the word in English. And then again, they say, we are, with our videos and our subtitles, we are fighting for dignity and political and social awareness. It's big statements where they come from. And then there's a French one. I tried to give you several ones. There are many more. This is French. We don't belong to any political party or religion. We are open here. We don't earn any money, so we're doing this for free. And then in here, we give you information that is simple, quick, and verified. Well, your word against my word. Yeah, but that is the way they're trying to just convince you of other alternatives here. And then this is one example. You know, actors. How do they do it? They get this girl who is talking about banks and how abusive banks can be. And then she's speaking in English, and then they give you subtitles. And then what they do is this awareness. They say, okay, this girl is doing blah, 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 and then you got here the subtitles. Sorry about the quality of the subtitles. They're not very good. We realize that, but the important thing is the message. Don't pay attention to the subtitles so much, but it's the message. However, if you want to have better subtitles, go to a different link. There, they've been revised and they're better subtitles. So they are doing all these things around the translation and the subtitles and how they can guide you to better things there. This is, I won't show it to you, but this is something that a few years back, nobody would have translated. This is the political debate in Spain. At the last minute, at the last day, they got 1 minute to summarize everything for the politics. Why would you be interested when we're going to be voting in Spain tomorrow? But somebody was interested and translated into English. Yeah, and circulated around the world in English subtitles. And what you can see here, it is that the translator, this is a really very specific, very Spanish. So it's telling you, don't forget Punica. What's Punica? Bracket, corruption case. Blah, blah, blah. What's that? It's so Spanish and so temporal. Bracket, illegal party funding. What is that? Brackets, explaining again. So it was very challenging. It was very narrow, but still they felt that they wanted to translate into English and circulate and get all other people to know what is going on in there. You've got some other ones. I like this one, but I am aware of the time in here. Yeah, this is a little boy shouting to the world and in Arabic. And what you get in there, it was translated in various ways. So different people, I found the video in different ways. So you can see, hey world, one translation, please share this message with all the countries. Yeah? Okay, that's what he's saying in Arabic. Then another translator went, hey, please deliver this message to the world. It is your duty, which wasn't in the original. It wasn't in this one here. Yeah? So you can see how the translators are getting more or less involved with the message and getting more persuasive in the way that they are presenting the information. And then you've got there the statistics on how it was distributed. And then another one that I like in here is, again, you've got this video, how the typography is used differently. So you got here all capital letters. If the person is really upset, the subtitle, all in capital. And then also it really becomes really agitated. And then you got here, in there, we don't use lots of exclamation marks. These are blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we only use one. But you can say how they come through the translation. They wouldn't do that in a commercial, and if they did, they wouldn't get a second job. You don't do that in commercial. But in here, they felt more engaged to be integrated there. And then what we've got again, not only the translation, but it's the framing. I'm gonna already put you in the set of mind that you're gonna be watching this in a different angle. And then what you've got here is, this interview is to the CEO of Nestle. He comes from a different planet. Yeah, we have to, we have translated this video for you to make you see, or for you to know that Peter Barbrek is someone from a different planet. What he's saying is stupid, and that's why we're doing this translation for you to understand. So they're already criticizing the interviewee in a way that when you read the subtitles, you're going to be already prepared to go against that person. So it's another way. Mona Baker has been working, for instance, in the law on this reframing. How do you repurpose your translation there? And then the one that I like is this laughtivism. This idea that you don't need to be serious to convince other people, but you can use laughter. You can be also persuasive using irony and sarcasm. That's been forever in literature and in newspapers, but that is the way you can recontextualize. So some of the subtitles are technically perfect. You just think, well, that's what it is. However, if you look at the content, they're outrageously stupid. But we suspend this belief. We want to enjoy those videos. So I'm going to show you a little one here. I've called them fake stuff. Already you see it and then you laugh. Yeah. It is a tragic film, but everybody, one of my colleagues at university, she cannot use it because everybody laughs. Yeah, because they see the video and that's what it brings to your mind. But you got one that I like very much in here. Have you seen it? So you've got there all the cues, please save me from this man. He's turning to him. The technical dimension is very good, but we all know that that's not what he's saying. The video has been manipulated to incorporate in between the shaking of the hands and blah, blah. And it is clearly leaving Trump in a really bad light. Yeah, that's the whole point of this video. And these are the ones that are becoming very, very popular with a particular agenda in the way that they've been used. And I'm not going to tell you other engagements in here because you know a lot more than I do with Danmu, which is something that is very, very sort of Asian, Japan, China particularly, the way you engage, the way you just communicate, the way you do things. When I show this to my students in Europe, they just laugh about how can anybody see anything and what are they? Are they mentally deranged? Watch out. YouTube has already created something similar called Emoji, which is to create Danmu in Spanish, Italian, French, German. So watch this space. If in a few years' time, my students will also be sending Danmus and sending things in other languages different. But that is the new way of people engaging with the media and using the translations. And then very quickly, because I'm running out of time here, artificial intelligence, and give you a little bit of my take on that. Traditionally, we've been working with programs that were installed on your computer, and then they were professional or freeware. These are all quaint, really old, because nobody's really working in the industry, at least, with these types of programs. You just go into the cloud. Yeah, and what we've got in the cloud is they started in free initiatives like TED. Behind TED, it was .sub. That's what they allowed them to do, subtitles, and that was in the cloud. You didn't know anything. Still, till this day, you don't need anything. Very basic, not really good for professional, but that was done that way. But with the pandemic and so on, we started with programs all in the cloud. The problem with this is that all these are proprietary. You can only see those if you are working for the company. So how can I train you to be the subtitles of the future if this is only for the ones that are working now, which is not very good. And then what we've got as well is it's been so popular with subtitling that now you also find dubbing in the cloud. You don't need to have anything installed and you can work there. The only one, and I will suggest, and I think Dingkun is quite familiar with this program, this is one hybrid option that you can see what the cloud looks like and then operate without having to work for any company there. So in here, you've got the technology classes is you don't need to install anything, no problem. If I do any updates, you don't need to install a new version. I'll do it in my computer or in my system, and then it's everyone else. Security, I don't need to send you anything. All the videos are kept in here. If I send you a video, what are you going to do? If I send you to translate the latest Harry Potter, are you going to sell it to someone else and buy a house in the Caribbean? or what are you going to do? If I give you access to this website, you cannot download anything, and then I'm much more controlled. I'm controlling the material a lot more. So that's so much. Those are some of the positives. In here, of course, everything is in the cloud. Translation, project management, everything. And that's why the industry likes the cloud. It's not because it's good for translation. It's good for the industry to do everything. Among those, translation. And then in subtitling, you can do everything. Yeah, you can do more that you could do with programs on installable programs that you install on your computer. For instance, you can burn and encode your subtitles in one video through the place there. So some of the things here, machine translation has become more operative in our field. Translation memories. Funnily enough, we didn't have anything in translation, in audiovisual translation, in that sense, in that direction. And the first thing we did was machine translation. Right? You know, we didn't use translation memories. Translation memories have been in the industry for many years. It's worked really well for technical and scientific, but nobody thought about that. We're going to do machine translation. And they discovered, well, it's not working. Well, surprise, surprise. I think, well, maybe we could take a look at translation memories and then see. But it came later. We went the other way around to the rest. And then, I don't know, you're familiar with MemoQ and Trados or SDL. Both have got now APIs for subtitling. Yeah, and it's machine, is memory, not machine. And then I will also call you, I will suggest if you read this manifesto, which is from an association of translators, audiovisual translators, that's what they propose as well for technology. The translator is here, and then you've got everything around with all technology. We're not shy, we're not negative against machine translation, but it shouldn't be the only thing available. You know, there could be many other things. Now we waste a lot of time. For instance, with your video, you have to go back, forward, and what are your feet for? You're not using your feet for anything. You could use your pedal to go back, forward, and then your hands to print, for instance. Very simple, very silly. You do that for transcription, but we don't do it for subtitling. So they come in with ergonomics of subtitle in a different perspective. And this is what it looks like if you're in the platform. This is the European Parliament, as I mentioned to you earlier on, which is slightly different. And then if you wanted to see Netflix, again, they all do the same, text and your video. And then underneath, you can see the audio, and then you can do your shot changes and everything that you need for your subtitles. So pretty similar, all of them. Where does AI come into the equation here? So what we've got is we are here, dialogue, only a minute part of an audiovisual production. There are so many other things. You've got images, you've got body language, you've got visual effects, you've got sound, you've got all these sort of things. And we can hear and we can see. We can hear language, which is what we translate, but we can also hear sounds, what we use for SDH. I have to tell that some sounds are taking place. I can see text written on the screen, but I can see the way they dressed up, symbols that they do. Don't go. Don't go. You know why they shouldn't go. You probably don't know. It's full chock-a-block. Yeah, but I am communicating. So all that is embedded in our programs. And that's why it makes this enormously exciting for artificial intelligence. Because what can you do with a written text in a piece of paper? But here, you could play with the mouth. You could play with the eyes. You could play with the sounds. You could do lots of things. And that's why everybody is talking these days about artificial intelligence. Yeah. Now, I've got my serious doubts, and I don't know what they're saying now at the Baptist University. They're probably saying the opposite of what I'm saying here. But so what we can do automated text translation. That's the traditional thing. That's not artificial intelligence. That's been since the 50s. You get a text, written text, and then automatically it's translated. Artificial intelligence. What we can do as well, automatic speech recognition. Okay, this has been going on for a while. Okay, I speak, and then you see the text written. Okay, fine. But what can I say? Synthetic voices. Somebody records me, then analyze my pitch, my blah, blah, and then they recreate my voice without me. Now, this is challenging. If I am a voice actor, if I am doing dubbing and I lend my voice and they record me and then they reuse, that gives me trouble. And I don't know where we stand. In terms of translation, I still need to translate and do things. Yeah. What can I do as well? Image recognition. Yeah. Not only recognition, image manipulation. So traditionally, if you do dubbing, what do? You open your mouth, and then what I need to do is my translation. I need to create a translation that fits the lips. Yeah. If somebody says, no, and they open their mouth, I need to create something that also opens the mouth. Otherwise, you're going to say, bah, and then the mouth is open, and in your language is different. What does artificial intelligence propose? The opposite. Do your translation, don't worry. And now what I'm going to do is move the lips. And then when I need to open them, I'll open them. And when I need to close them, I close them. Fine, but what if I am Brad Pitt? Am I going to be in Spanish going in all directions? And is that me? Are you manipulating my image and doing things with my image and so on? What is my ethical rights? Will I agree to that? So those are things that we still don't know. What can we do? We can do speech to text. And we've been doing that quite successfully, for instance, for re-speaking. If you had a meeting through Zoom, you can activate the voice and then you can see the text written there is working pretty well. Not so well if you're doing a film where people are talking one on top of the other. There is music in the background, very challenging, but we can do that sort of thing. What we can also do is text to speech. Yeah? And then this is being quite good as well, for instance, for audio description. I've got a written text. I use some machine that will then translate into read that text for blind people, and the blind people can then listen to that. You can do dubbing as well. You got the text and then you get a synthetic voice. Sounds not very good. Video games, they've been trying a little bit, but that is one thing that you could do. Or you can do as well deep fakes. They move their mouths and then you do a translation that is totally opposite, it's totally different, and you can really tell if it's true or not. Yeah, and this is very, very problematic. And then the last frontier in here is speech to speech. I talk to you in Spanish or in English, and you will hear, you have your headphones and you hear me in Chinese. Can you do that? Is the last frontier. Apparently, Baidu says that they can. Yeah, and they came up with this that they seem to be saying that. Of course, YouTube wouldn't be any less. If the competitors are doing something, they say, oh, we also do machine learning. What I have seen is ridiculous, but they tell you, oh, no, but we're only doing it with some people. You don't have access. Not everybody has access to what we are doing. Well, okay, I'll trust them if they say that they're doing it. But this is what we are investigating now. So that's why I think artificial intelligence is so imaginative and is bringing so much into the equation, because you can really play with anything. yeah, in your translations. Are they settled in the industry? No. And I don't know of any big corporation working with changing the lips or doing things like that because they don't trust it. You know, it's too risky for many angles, including ethical ones. I'm finishing now in here. What do I see the future like? You know, my little crystal ball in here. Well, you've got, we do have an incremental increase in volume. There's going to be more and more. And we're going to need more people to deal with some of this and also access services. I'm very glad I came for the first time to China in 2012, if I remember correctly, and I went to Beijing and I was talking to a group of people about audio description. And I won't be able to replicate their faces because they didn't know what I was talking about. They were just looking at me and what is that? And do you do that in Europe, really? What funny things we do. And not that long later, now I'm really pleased to see that that is taking on in countries, in other countries, and in China now there are quite a few initiatives dealing with this, and even in Hong Kong here an association for audio description. So it's really interesting on how things are changing on that front. We haven't had automation in audiovisual translation, but it's coming, and we need to be prepared. If you're going to do football, if you're going to be doing cookery programs, then probably there's a lot of repetition that not machine, but maybe perhaps with memory tools that will be helping you to translate and work. And this is something that we need to be aware and also work with the developers and so on. There is more dubbing for me into English, which is good because I live in London. Yeah, and I get all this new interest and all these new initiatives there. We're going to have more granularity. Yeah, so expect that in the future, people will say, okay, do you subtitles? What type of subtitles do you do? Do you do comedies? Do you do documentaries? Do you do more corporate videos? Do you do more medical or whatever? And this is something that I'm finding more and more coming from some of the companies. And then from the academic perspective, what I'm seeing in here is that there is more and more interest in audiovisual. There is more playing with some of the buzzwords that we use these days, like digital humanities, creative industries. This is always reverting back to audiovisual rather than other type of translation. Yeah? And I think that is where the future is probably going there. I know I went over my thing. Don't say for your invitation. I think you've got two types of say thank you. So I think I'm using the right one. Yeah. Don't say and share. Thank you.
You have some time for questions. We start with the audiences here. So anyone wish to raise any questions, or do you have any burning curiosities?
So question. Sure. Thank you for the interesting talk. What do you think would be the impact of this democratization of technology on translation theory? I guess they have brought significant challenge to the concepts of faithfulness or equivalence. So what would be the theoretical impact of this phenomenon?
I don't think we've done much research on this, on how the technology is impacting the way we're doing things in translation. There is, we all assume that technology is not biased, which is totally wrong. You know, we know that machine translation is sexist because if we are feeding the machine with sexist texts that have been translated with that bias, it's going to be replicating that. And I think that is something that we still haven't really incorporated into our translation practice and theory. There is a group of theoreticians in technology on how technology has got their own philosophy and approach. And I guess trying to work with people like that or trying to take a look from their perspective might be helpful in here. I do think that we need to rethink a lot in terms of theory. I happened to just been working many years ago on this when the equivalence, the theory of equivalence, it just wouldn't fit in subtitle. I have to delete information because otherwise it doesn't fit in there. And it wasn't the technology so much, but it was the technology as well. I've got so much time to translate and I delete this information. It doesn't mean that I am unfaithful or that I am not following the equivalence. It's just simply that I just cannot do that. And I remember that for many years, we weren't considered translation. We were considered adaptation, something else, because the changes we were doing were too radical for what translation theory was thinking it was. So I think in that sense, we do have, I don't think I will be one of those tackling that challenge on how technology needs to be evolving and how theory needs to take it more into consideration. But I think it's a debate that we need to have much more seriously than we have had so far.
Thanks for informative talk. So I have a question that you mentioned that whispering effect that using English, the most popular language as the templates, could potentially create like miss out some cultural specialities. But on the other hand, it is not realistic to have maybe Turkish people to study a kind of language that you cannot predict to be popular for a long period. Then, do you have any better solution to these questions, or can AI help in this?
If I had a better solution, I will be now living in a palace, a Caribbean house, a Caribbean house. I will be paid by all these companies that are trying to invent the wheel. How can we do this? Actually, it's nothing new. When I read books, Russian authors in Spanish books, they were done usually through French. Anna Frank, a diary that she wrote in Dutch, it was translated into many other languages through German. So this is something that we've encountered in other areas, but possibly not so violently on the screen, because you can hear that they're speaking Korean. If you understand Korean, you probably say, "Oh, how do they translate that? They're not saying that." And you can compare all the time, and I think that's what is helping in there. What I think that we're not doing really well now is, I was talking to people in Italy, and they were translating Brazilian films, Brazilian into English, into Italian. Now, Brazilian Portuguese and Italian are very close. They're Latin languages. I can understand both if it's written because it's similar to Spanish. Bringing in English, which is a totally different language, is stupid. Why do I want English? That is really different. You know, we share many idioms in Spanish and in Italian. Why do you give me English? I don't need English here. And I think that's what we need to do. Maybe have more than just one way. I don't know. I don't speak the languages, but I would imagine Polish, Czech, Slovak, all those languages probably work together through one of them rather than through English or other languages. So I think bringing in different ways, and I think I came once to Shanghai and I was talking to Huawei, because they were also doing lots of languages and many things, and they were thinking about that opportunity as well to cluster languages, the ones that will work well through English, the ones that will work through Spanish or French, for instance, as a pivot. Yeah, and then you can have all the Latin languages that are much closer to that, and they will reduce the distance between the languages. But so far, this is very new. We've been dealing with this for 5, 6, 22, 21, that they won the Oscar and so on, a few years. So I think everybody's finding, what can we do? How can we do it? And who knows, maybe in a few years it will be different. If I am living in the Caribbean, then you'll know who gave me the answer and the solution.
So I was wondering how can we, because we got a lot of reframed and repurposed videos up there. So I was wondering how can we audio describe these to people who are visually impaired? For example, the video that they're showing us that with Trump threatening the Japanese government. So how can we do that? Because it's mostly based on the subtitles, but then for people who are visually impaired, they can't really see it.
Yeah, well, they cannot. If they're blind, they cannot. If they're partially sighted, depends on their level of the visibility, the view that they have. There are many ways. Audio description was very difficult, for instance, in Scandinavian countries. In Scandinavian countries, they don't dub. So you had an American film or a Spanish film with subtitles in Swedish. So how can you make that available to a Swedish blind person that doesn't speak Spanish or doesn't speak English? So what we did is they created what they call audio subtitling. I've got some examples. So what you get is a voice, usually two voices. They started one voice that will be describing, and then another voice, masculine, and then another voice, feminine, who will be reading the subtitles. So cognitively speaking, it's very challenging because it's somebody's talking to you all the time, you know, and I cannot manage to just be through a film like that. I just get mental and I want to listen to everything and analyze, and I find it very difficult. But that was one solution that they found, doing it that way. What you also find is it doesn't need to be at the same time. So if you want to do that video, you can frame it. And then you can say at the beginning, the video you're going to see is the Prime Minister of Japan, who is standing in front of a lectern. Behind him is Trump looking blah, 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 blah. And then blah, blah, blah. And then when you go is when they are speaking, you read the subtitles. So you do a little bit at the beginning. They do that a lot in the opera and the theaters. And sometimes they invite the blind people to go to the stage, or they create a miniature stage so that they can get an idea of where people are going to be moving and what are they going to be doing and so on. And then I know people in one of the universities in the UK working with delayed watching. So you can be watching the video and then you can say, okay, go for the slow motion. So that means that the video will play for 1 minute. They will stop the video for 30 seconds. You put your audio description and then it continues from there on. So it's a different way of watching it. You might not like it because we just like throwing things very linear and consecutively. But if you're blind and you think that's going to be enhancing your experience because you get more details, maybe that works. And technically, it's very easy. You delay a little bit whenever you think it's feasible, particularly when it's very heavy dialogue written. But yeah, there are options there. And again, that's technology and artificial intelligence that you could be finding the places and so on.
Oh, is there any question from our online audiences?
Who is monitoring them? I don't know if my screen shows. I only see my PowerPoint.
You can.
Question while you're doing that.
Sure.
I want to know how you did, subtitling in the past when you have no access to see like the film. That must be very different from what you're doing now, right?
Totally.
I remember many years ago I was asked to do translation from Chinese to English for 3 documentaries. I was not given any any audio or video of the documentary. I was only given the script, and I didn't do the dubbing. I didn't do subtitling. I simply reproduced transcript. The script,
translation of the
translation
transcript
of
that
the
you've been
script
given.
in the other language.
Very common, unfortunately.
So, and when you're doing subtitling under that condition, without having access to the audio video, how did you do that? So how can you?
It depends. Sometimes there were many scenarios. That to start with, a recipe for disaster.
Right.
And the people doing that, they weren't clearly concerned about the end quality of the production. They might be as well sometimes the small companies that didn't have the resources or whatever. But there were many ways of doing that. You could do the translation, and then they will have somebody in-house that was doing the technical dimension. So they will do is chop your translation, say, okay, here. Sometimes not even understanding the original. So you will say, okay, I can understand this word here, should go there. And then they had a few areas where they could understand, and they knew I need to be here now with my subtitles. No, I have to go back and see what I've done wrong, which was really, really domestic way of doing it and really poor. The other way that you had as well, they will do that. You will see the translation. Usually the reason that they gave us was this cannot go out. It's too sensitive. And if people watch it or see it, then we're in trouble. So you did the translation, and then they will call you to go to the offices one day and then just go through quickly and then do the adjustments there. But even till this day, there are some companies that when you do a subtitling test, they will, when you apply for a job, they'll give you a test. And some of them, they don't give you the visuals. They give you the subtitles and they give you an explanation. And I always fight with those people. I say, well, really? you know, in 2023 with all the technology, and you're giving them people text and say, imagine this is so and so, they are in this place, blah, 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 blah. And if they say, oh, this is so nice, I cannot translate that in Spanish. Both nice. It's a table, feminine. It's a computer, masculine. It's many things, plural. It's not. I cannot. But they do it that way, again, because they don't invest enough, they don't do their test properly, they don't have the resources, a proper platform where they can test you and all that. So I guess nobody's perfect. Companies are not perfect either. But they still manage to find ways.
Yeah, I think we have a question from online. So
Glad that they weren't lost.
Hey, can you hear me?
yes.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wang. And hi, Jorge. Greeting from.
Hello, hi, Dante.
Yes. So I have a question about the course design of a subtitling course, because I think as you also mentioned in the slides, that subtitling is sometimes emphasized a lot on the software or the cloud-based platform that used. So I think somehow it's a little bit like a course like computer-aided translation, like CAT, that students should have a lot of opportunities to practice such software, or we may say technology in class. So from your perspective and based on your experience, how much efforts does a teacher should spend on teaching technology-related kind of skill to the students who studies subtitling?
Do you want my honest answer?
Yes, of course.
Or the polite one. I've got a student here, so he'll probably correct me if I say what is wrong and it's not true. Basically, I just throw students in the deep end. So I do my session in week 1 and week 2. I give them the technology and I said, now it's up to you if you want to learn more or less. I'll give you a few sessions, but then all the time you spend outside. Because A, in the UK, our courses are very short. And B, because the idea is that you don't simply learn in the classroom, you need to learn outside. And that's going to be true for whenever you go. If you go to a company or you work freelancing, you probably work with several companies with several platforms, and then you need to be quick on the uptake. You need to be quick on guessing where things are and so on. And that's why, you know, if you start with one program and then you find out about the program, then it's much better for that. What I do as well, sometimes my students don't know, don't tell them, that the platform contains as well an automated engine. So they could do the subtitles automatically, but I don't tell them. And then towards the end of the course, I said, well, has anybody done automated subtitles? No, we don't know how to do it. Well, it was always there. No, it means that you haven't searched and worked with the platform. But I think that's something we need to instigate, that sort of curiosity to do outside, because you cannot do it all in class. You know, I devote my lessons more, still the traditional probably approach, language solutions, you know, the market, things that, you know, they probably will enjoy my knowledge rather than the platform that is, you know, easy, with an easy guide, with all the tutorials that you find they can do outside. So in my case, very little.
Okay, thank you very much for the honest answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Well, thank you very much. We have to conclude the session, but
So,
we
but you can ask me.
Yeah, stay around.
Yeah.
If you
I'm not going
have
away.
a nice chat. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for showing up here
Thank
and
you.
online. I wish you have a
That's it.
good night.
Thank you.